They said they buried me under the weight of a mortgage and hidden debts, but they forgot I had buried something deeper beneath the soil. In my own backyard, in the garden I planted with my husband's hands, lay the seeds of truth they could never uproot. My name is Evelyn. I once called Detroit home. Now, it's a battlefield where memory is my only weapon. If you believe that stories of pain deserve their own stage, if you've ever felt silenced, then smash that subscribe button now. Let this story echo farther than my voice. Your support allows us to bring whispered truths into the light. They came for me at dawn. The wind still crowned the rooftops with last night's shadows. I sensed movement before I saw it, shuffling steps, low voices. My heart hammered, though I tried to remain still. But then there was a knock at the back gate, almost delicate, and a child's voice called, "Ms. Evelyn's outside." In moments, a small crowd gathered, neighbors, passers-by, faces I once knew. They expected me to step forward. They expected me to be broken. But I did neither. I straightened my shoulders, brushed dust off my skirt, and turned away from the gate, not because I feared stepping inside, but because I already crossed the door that mattered. I already unlocked the room they believed forever sealed. I spoke softly yet clearly. I was never just a shadow. I was the woman holding the key. When John and Marisol moved back into that house, everyone assumed I was done. Done fading. Done hoping. They had transferred the deed, swallowed every bank account, cut me off from neighbors, locked me in spare rooms, locked me out of every rightful space. They had erased me. I stood silent as they took control. I stood quiet as they rerouted mail, changed passwords, downgraded my phone to something they thought I couldn't use. They told the world I was frail. I was old. That I could not understand. That decisions were too much for me now. But they forgot what age cannot steal. Memory, dignity, the stubbornness rooted in love. The day everything shifted, I discovered a folder hidden behind the drywall in the back garden shed. It was nailed in place, disguised under plywood. The shock in my chest when I pried it open. I found bank statements, loan agreements, transfer documents signed in my name but never by me. John's signature alongside mine. Marisol's handwriting, clean and cunning. Loans taken out with my name as guarantor. Debt boards filled with my credit. Obligations I never ordered. And then, my wildest hope, the document written by my late husband, Lucas, notarized, describing a buried capsule under the garden oak, containing every original deed, every trust and title he ever drafted in our name. I sat in that dusty shed, tears tracing down my cheeks, not of despair, but of fury and relief twisted together. I photographed everything. I gathered proofs. The secret key Lucas buried among the roots, letters, trust statements. I brought a flash drive hidden in my apron pocket, loaded every file. I emerged before dawn, heart echoing like wings in my chest. When morning broke, my first call was to someone I had not dialed in years. Harper Shaw, a former litigator who once defended me in small county cases. His voice was weary, but still steady. "Evelyn," he said, "you still have more than enough. Let me help you bury them with truth." They never saw it coming. Tax filings, forged documents, power of attorney changes, all were swept aside by one afternoon's revelation. The day we arrived in the county courthouse, the air was colder than I expected. Not just in temperature, but in gaze. You could feel the doubt hovering. Can she still stand? Does she belong? Staff whispered. One court aide glanced at me, pitying. But I sat steady, hands folded, breathing slow. John and Marisol entered together. He in a dark suit that swallowed him. She in pale tones and rehearsed sympathy. They looked at me like they expected me to crumble. The judge called the court to order. The proceedings began with dates, names, affidavits. But formality is brittle when confronted by proof. Harper rose. "We are here because a woman was stripped of her rights, not by strangers, but by those she loved. We are here because law should protect, not punish the vulnerable." When my turn came, I walked slowly to the stand. My legs trembled, but my voice did not. I swore to tell the truth. I held up the first exhibit, a forged loan agreement in my name, signed under duress. This was submitted without my knowledge. I did not sign it. Gasps broke. Marisol's lips parted, then clamped shut. One by one, we brought exhibit after exhibit. Email threads showing Marisol's manipulations, voice recordings restoring what they claimed I could no longer muster. One recording, a phone call in which Marisol says, "Once we have her signature, it's ours. She's too old to fight." Date stamped. Indisputable. Silence reigned. They attempted to challenge my cognitive ability. Harper allowed a brief video, me at my computer weeks ago, typing precise calculations, naming contract terms, calling old business partners by name. The claim I was mentally compromised dissolved under that light. When Harper presented Lucas's notarized capsule document, the courtroom leaned forward. He created this trust because he knew someday someone would try to rewrite our home. Because he knew I would refuse to forget. John's face collapsed. Marisol's mask cracked. Later, when the judge recessed, an envelope was handed to me, a sworn affidavit from the notary who claimed she had been misled and coerced into verifying the forged documents. The scale tipped. A tense silence followed. The judge's verdict came after 3 days of testimony. We find the plaintiff, Ms. Evelyn Monroe, was coerced by familial intimidation into surrendering rights unlawfully. We pay heed to evidence of fraud, forgery, financial abuse. All documents submitted under her name are hereby voided. Full restitution and transfer back of title is ordered. John hung his head. Marisol's eyes brimmed, but she said nothing. Reporters in the gallery murmured. One called out, "Ms. Monroe, what gave you strength to fight back?" I looked up. I smiled, not for them, but for the part of me that refused to be invisible. Because they thought I was dust. And dust remembers how to burn. Harper asked me afterward, "What now, Evelyn? Will you keep the house or sell and move somewhere peaceful?" I gazed out toward the garden, the oak behind the house, the beds we once tended together, the stone path Lucas and I laid by hand. This place was more than land. It was our story. I said, "I am not leaving. I will resurrect it." Renovations began. Contractors used reclaimed wood, local artisans painted murals in the foyer, walls opened to let morning light spill. We turned old rooms into reading corners, music rooms, community spaces. In the basement, we revived Lucas's hidden truth vault as a local archive. The deed itself now sits framed in the gallery, Lucas's handwriting preserved, my name shining anew. Children came first. A girl named Zara borrowed a book and hugged it. Elderly couples read by lamplight. Artists displayed pieces inspired by memory. We planted native flowers around the oak and placed a bench with a plaque, "Built on truth, rooted in love." As dusk fell, I walked room to room. I felt laughter, paper turning, voices of strangers sharing stories strongest in quiet corners. I stood under the archway where John and Marisol once locked me out. I said softly into the dusk, "I was never just a shadow. I was the woman holding the key. I didn't plan on becoming a landmark. I just wanted to be left whole." But as word spread about the house on Linwood Street, people started to come. Not out of pity, but out of recognition. They brought bread, books, paintings, their children, their memories. They asked if they could sit on the bench near the plaque, the one by the oak tree where Lucas once carved our initials. I always said yes. That was the point. This house wasn't mine anymore. Not just mine. It had become something larger, an answer to every time someone said we were too old to matter. The community center grew, not because we asked for funds or begged for attention, but because it stood as proof. That memory matters. That erasure can be undone. That healing is louder than harm if you let it root deep enough. I watched people water the garden I once cried in. I watched teens volunteer in the kitchen I had been pushed out of. I watched elders run writing workshops in the room that was once locked from the outside to silence me. Every corner that had once held grief now held creation. And yet, they returned. John and Marisol. Quietly. No fanfare. No demands. One Sunday morning during our poetry circle, I heard the back gate creak. I turned my head, and there they were. No polished suits. No smirks. Just tired clothes. Nervous hands. John held a crate of donated paperbacks. Marisol had a box of paints. They stood there, waiting. Not for forgiveness. I think they knew better than to ask. Just for permission to be near what they had tried to destroy. I looked at them for a long moment. Then I gestured toward the side room where we stored art supplies. Shelves need organizing, I said. And then I walked away. They came back the next week. And the next. They stayed silent, working beside others. They were treated like volunteers, not family. No special treatment, no scorn. Just part of the community. That was enough. I never told them they were forgiven. I didn't need to. Some things don't live in words. They live in time. Marisol once brushed past me in the hallway and murmured, "Thank you for not turning us away." I didn't respond. But I didn't move either. That was all she got. That was all there was left to say. John started leaving books on the donation table with handwritten notes inside. Quotes, bits of poetry, old memories. I once found a book of Lucas's favorite sermons with a note. He would have wanted this shared. I tucked it into the shelf marked Legacy. At night, the house hummed with soft light. Warm, not harsh. No flickering security bulbs or garish chandeliers. Just the kind of glow that makes a place feel like memory. I would walk room to room, letting my cane tap gently across the floor, and listen. In the art studio upstairs, a child once painted a portrait of a woman with silver hair and a garden behind her. When I asked who it was, she said, "That's Miss Evelyn. She lives in the house that remembers." I didn't cry, but I wanted to. In the library, someone pinned a note to the wall. "Thank you for keeping the lights on. In here, and in us." I folded that note and put it in my apron pocket. It stayed there for days. A kind of amulet. And then came the letter. From the Detroit Historical Society. They had heard about the project. They wanted to feature the house in a citywide exhibition on restored memory and resistance. They called it a living archive. I just called it home. A journalist visited to write a profile. She asked me, "What was the moment you knew it was yours again?" I said, "When the silence changed. When it stopped echoing with pain and started ringing with laughter." She smiled, wiped her eyes. I think she expected revenge. Fire. Ruin. But I said softly, "Real revenge is not about breaking things. It's about building something they can't tear down." She asked for a photo. I stood in front of the house, hands clasped, chin up. No smile. No dramatics. Just presence. Later, when the photo appeared online, someone commented, "She looks like the kind of person you don't ignore twice." I printed it out. Taped it to the inside of my kitchen cabinet. Months passed. Winter came. We didn't close. We added heaters, warm blankets, soft lighting. We hosted story nights, soup circles, art shares. One night, as snow fell lightly outside, I sat by the front window and saw a group of kids building a crooked snowman in the yard. One of them ran inside and asked, "Can we use the old scarf in the coat room?" I nodded. He dashed off yelling. She said yes. That joy, that sense of being part of something, that was the thing they tried to steal. But it bloomed again anyway. One evening, I stood under the magnolia tree. The same one Lucas planted the year we bought the house. My hand traced the initials still faintly carved in the bark, E+L. I closed my eyes and remembered it all. The dinners, the fights, the dance in the kitchen after our anniversary. The years of quiet. The betrayal. The rage. The silence. And now this. The house no longer belonged to pain. It belonged to truth. to books and paint and whispers and memory. In spring, we held our first community storytelling festival. Chairs lined the lawn. A microphone on the porch. People shared memories, poems, letters. At the end of the night, they handed me the mic. I didn't want to speak, but I did. I was told I was too old, too confused, too much a burden. They tried to erase me. I paused. But I remembered. And I made sure someone else would too. They stood for me. Not because I was a hero, but because I stood back up. And stayed standing. When the applause died, I handed the mic to a girl no older than 10. She spoke a story about her grandmother baking cornbread and humming old songs. She said, "I want to be like her one day. I want to remember things." Now, when people ask what the house is, I say, it's not a place. It's a memory with a front door. And when they ask who built it, I say, we did. With stories and refusal and roots that outlived cruelty. I am Evelyn Monroe. I was never just a woman in a locked room. I was the woman holding the key. Thank you for listening to my story. If this stirred something in you, if you've ever been ignored, underestimated, or told your time was done, know this: you are not finished. You are not invisible. And you are not alone. We tell stories like this because wisdom deserves a voice. Because justice has no expiration date. So if this story mattered to you, subscribe to the channel, share it, and let these truths echo far past silence. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and remember, when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens.